miserable, although his fever is gone. Last two, blah, with attention to trying to administer sulfur drugs to combat whatever is going on. They know there's a poisoning coming from Georgia that he used to like to soak in. They just they've been maligned in his to what really happened. So I'm trying to do them the justice. It really piqued my interest in this. All died. All of this is going on.
It's stranger than fiction. Man, I've been blown away so many times. Like, no freaking way. That is
And
indeed.
print, it's not going to be good. Cross-examined and maligned in history for the next 30 years. You know what?
If not forever.
I just don't. And of course, that when he, I don't need to get the be-all and end-all of of medical knowledge and what tell everybody who murdered them and how they did it and this and that. But you know what? I want you to read. But we'll save that for the book. Really out of it. Concrete slab.
And they both turned black.
Hitler had at least 42 attempts on his life from 1933 until 1944.
Didn't he have like a body double going around?
He had more than one body double. As a matter of fact, one was a woman. Believe it or not,
wow.
One was a woman. And she must have been a handsome lady, I'll tell you that. So, one of them came right from inside his group. Erwin Rommel. He was an infantry genius. William Rommel, the Desert Fox. He had a coup to assassinate Hitler from within, and it was discovered, and he was taken from his house, and they made him take a cyanide capsule on July 20th, 1944. Wow. So there's all of these people are undergoing these they're trying to take the leaders out. They're all undergoing these assassination attempts. What happened to Churchill was probably Churchill survived dozens of attempts.
I know, and that guy's so freaking slow. How the heck? How is he still walking around? I'm like, there's a Tweedle right there. His name is Churchill. We're going to take him out. He's like, no, you're not.
Smart dude. Another one of my cousins, Winston Churchill. Good old Winnie.
Oh, Winnie.
He was pretty sharp, and there was some, the Brits are pretty good with intel. MI5 and MI6 are just about the best in the world, and they were pretty good back then. So the Germans were smart. There are real 007s in this world, folks. I mean, it just doesn't exist in Hollywood. We have them, other countries have them, and these people they're in deep cover. This is what they do. They are out there to dig up stuff. So what the Germans did, they had somehow infiltrated Churchill's group, and they did a little information on him, and they realized that there's two things this guy liked. One of them was dark chocolate. Winston Churchill liked his dark chocolate.
Yes.
So what they did was they made a bomb and disguised it as a chocolate.
Oh, yes. I remember reading or seeing that somewhere. Holy shnikes.
And this is right out of Maxwell Smart. You can't make this crap up. You just can't,
Yeah, I would have been dead.
Nazis are a lot of things. The German people are a lot of things, but stupid is not among them. These are pretty smart, pretty clever folks. And they were working overtime. But MI5 caught it, and it almost worked. What was supposed to happen was they made this chocolate bar, and they dressed it up, make it look fantastic with gold trim and gold leafing. And what was supposed to happen, it was supposed to go in Churchill's chambers. He was supposed to peel off the wrapper, and that was going to ignite the bomb, and it was going to blow his head off. And you know what? It almost worked. These people are really trying overtime to knock each other off. In the case of FDR, that one was successful. Stalin, later on, 1953, Stalin was poisoned by Beria, who was a member of the Politburo.
Well, I guess what goes around comes around, huh, Stalin?
he actually, Stalin was probably one of the biggest egomaniacs, one of the biggest megalomaniacs.
Didn't he poison his own wife? He's like, I don't trust you, you have to go. Now I'm going to poison you, okay?
he was just unbelievable. He poisoned his first wife and his second wife, actually.
Oh my God. Yeah. Don't marry that guy, okay?
1907. I mean, they were only married for 18 months, and Stalin had her killed, and he destroyed all of her medical records.
Oh my gosh. You no longer exist.
He was something. His second wife started questioning what he was doing, and she disappeared. He had her killed. It was just unbelievable. He even had his doctor killed. His doctor would give him massages every day, and he was starting to give massages and give medical administration to other people in the Politburo and he thought that he knew too much, so he had him killed.
Oh my God.
To say nothing of the Great Purge, where they had show trials and he just blatantly murdered, an eighth of the entire country. I mean, this guy was, when it comes to being a megalomaniac and a lunatic, I mean, one must really stand in awe of Joseph Stalin.
Yes, indeed.
I mean,
As
this guy,
FDR did.
yeah, he was one of the first members of the Politburo. And what he did is he would somehow pit one against the other and let them knock each other off until he finally took out the last one, and then he ran the country. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt, they were allies. But they both knew that Stalin was a temporary ally.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that the big question I'm always asked is, well, why would anybody be interested in knocking off FDR? Because he was so cooperative with Churchill, and he was so cooperative with Stalin, and this and that and the other thing. And here's why. FDR, at the end of the war, he wanted to start the four policemen of the globe: the United States, China, Soviet Union, and Great Britain. These people didn't want to split the world with FDR. They wanted to rule the world. They were not going to play nicely with these people. So there were people behind the scenes who wanted FDR out of the way. He actually stood. He stood in the way of the land grab of the post-war world. So there's a lot of motive going on here. Actually, Operation Long Jump was something that Hitler planned to assassinate the Allied leaders, Churchill, FDR, and Stalin.
Wow.
At the Tehran conference. These guys were going after each other like crazy, and the Nazis were pretty good at it. They got caught a couple of times, but think about the times they didn't get caught, and think about who they probably took out. They were pretty sharp people. So poisonings throughout history. It sounds far out today. Yeah, you were poisoned and this and that and the other thing. Poisoning has been used as a legitimate weapon since around, I don't know, 330 BC. Everybody from Rasputin to the Apostle John in the Bible were poisoned. And it reached about the Italian Renaissance in the 14th century is when poisonings really reached their peak as far as being a weapon, a militarized weapon. Even today, food tasters are used. Hitler
They've
was
been
using,
around for thousands of years. I think that might be the longest running job, really.
yeah,
Food testers.
Hitler was using food testers. Matter of fact, I just read an article that the oldest living food tester for Adolf Hitler finally died. She was in her 90s.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this is heavy duty things. They would use military prisoners.
She was
They would
lucky at
use
Russian roulette.
no kid. They would use military prisoners. They would use um, monkeys.
Oh,
If they had monkeys,
wow.
our systems are similar
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. They would use monkeys. They'd use military prisoners. Sometimes they would use dogs to see what happened to them. And I mean, it became such a such an issue that today we have the Presidential Food Safety Team. I mean, there's so many people. There's so many people who have been poisoned throughout history. Turkey's 8th president was poisoned from a glass of lemonade at the Bulgarian embassy in 1993. This is severe stuff. So the food safety team, what they're tasked with is setting up a food safety zone for the president, the dignitaries, and the president's family within the White House. Don't send cupcakes to the president, regardless of who the president is. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He ain't getting your cupcakes, folks. They're going in the garbage. Everything, all of the food that is made for the president is closely guarded and overseen by the president, the people who guard the president, as well as Secret Service members. And it's very interesting. They watch where the food is made. They oversee everything, and they do this because it is such a problem. Even the air in the White House is filtered. It's a bizarre thing, and all of these people who they use food testers when they go outside of that zone. I know Reagan, Bush the elder, Clinton, Bush the baby Bush, George W. used it.
George
Obama.
W.
I'm sure it just goes on and on and on. I'm sure it happened to Trump too. I happen to know somebody who said there was some assassination attempts on Trump that nobody talked about either.
Yeah. I don't think he wants anybody to know.
There's
Everyone loves me.
there's some stuff going on, and you know what? They all have attempts. They all have attempts, but I'm not going to get into that. But and if you look at things from a different point of view, we're all being poisoned with GMOs and fluoride and
wood chips. The food that we eat.
Additives.
Yeah, the food we eat here in the United States is outlawed in most other countries. It's pretty insane what we put in our bodies, and we think we're eating healthy.
Yeah, it's definitely something else. If you take a look at Roman Emperor Claudius, Mark Antony, Napoleon, Cleopatra, Henry VIII, Lincoln, all of these people had attempts on their life with poisoning. So this is not tinfoil hat talk. This is real talk. These things happened. It's hard to. Queen Elizabeth is another one. It's really.
I can't believe that woman is still alive. I'm like, seriously, is she a fembot?
Your guess is as good as mine. I know there's at least about one body double at play there. So we come back to the cause of death. Okay, the cause of death with FDR is cerebral hemorrhage. True. That's not made up. That's true. But it was not brought on by something that was of natural causes.
Rat poisoning can cause cerebral hemorrhages. Like, there's so many different things that can cause your vessels to leak.
Yeah, it was caused by a poisoning. And one of the poisonings, and this is not what happened to FDR, but one of the poisonings, substances they were using to kill people, was warfarin. Warfarin was the big new drug of the day, and it was they were putting it in people's drinks, and their brains were bleeding out.
I think I remember seeing that in my granny's medicine cabinet. I know I've seen warfarin before.
Yeah, and it's heavy duty stuff. That's what Beria killed Stalin with, was warfarin. And it's I'm glad they've got a handle on this, and it's tightly controlled, and it needs to be, because I mean they wiped out a lot of people with it. It ended up in rat poisoning, and then of course warfarin was a blood thinner that it's highly controlled, in the medical community right now. So when I do this stuff and I talk about medicine, I have 4 or 5 people that I know who are doctors, one who's a medical examiner, and I will present them with information, and I'll ask them, am I right in assuming this? I really have to get other professionals involved in this, because I want to do the best work that I possibly can, and I'd be lying if I said that, I knew everything there is to know. I like to think of what I do as art, even though it might be finger painting, but I have to do the best art that I can do. So I have to get some other professionals involved. So if you look at FDR from 1943 to 1945 at the 2 conferences, totally different guy. 45, this guy
is insane, the difference.
And the pictures are all in my book. He's definitely suffering from an affliction. How this guy's alive, I'm sure I have no idea. And all of a sudden, Everyone around him is dying of a cerebral hemorrhage. General Paul Watson, one of FDR's closest generals, guess what? Dies coming back from the Alta Conference of a cerebral hemorrhage. As a matter of fact, at the Alta Conference, they were enjoying a steak and potato dinner. All of the allies and all of their people, their closely guarded heads of state, were all at this dinner from America. FDR was there. Harry Hopkins was there. FDR started to turn pale. He almost turned green. He started to vomit. He started sweating, and Harry Hopkins had to get him out of the room. Someone tried to poison him at Yalta, and no one talks about this. This is the other side of history. This, like I said, this is not tinfoil hat conspiracy talk, folks. This is real talk. This happened. So all of these people in and around FDR start to suffer poisoning, and it's really bizarre when you stop to think about this can happen. Why is no one screening these people? I mean, how can you have Russian spies around the president in the close proximity to the president when he dies? How is this possible? That could never happen today. Never. It's impossible. We've learned so many things.
Yeah, there's people that like break in and try to get onto the lawn and do other random things like that. But yeah, it's very close knit, closed down. Even in pickups and everything, I don't know. Things are insanely, very much protected for reasons. There's crazy people out there. There's people that want you dead all the freaking time, especially when you're in politics. I'm not surprised
Sorry.
about the whole Trump thing.
my mic was malfunctioning there.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, you got quiet. I was like, wow, he's waiting for me to say something.
I'm back.
He's back.
So with all of my books, what I do is I gather all of the suspects and I put them in a group and I screen them through the elements of a crime: motive, means, and opportunity. Who was around this person? Who had the motive to do this? Who had the opportunity to do this? There are people who might want to kill people in power who don't have the opportunity to do it. I might want to knock off somebody in Yugoslavia, but I don't have the means in which to do so. So I screen them through motive, means, and opportunity. And, in the end, the person is left who the evidence points to. So it's very, very interesting stuff. Other mysterious poisonings that happened other than Major General Watson. I already spoke about what happened at the Alta Conference to FDR. Personal secretary Marvin McIntyre, no relation to his doctor, Ross McIntyre. He died of a cerebral hemorrhage right about the same time that FDR started to have odd symptoms. And he died of a cerebral hemorrhage with the same symptoms that FDR was having.
Yeah, that makes me wonder where was he sitting at the dinner table and why exactly would they go after him?
I don't think that, well, I'm going to regret saying this, but as good as Churchill was in war, FDR's country was a lot more powerful. We had more resources. Churchill, like Japan, they were limited as to the resources that they had. This is why we did the Lend-Lease program, because we had resources and resources and resources, and we had the mass production facilities in mass that those countries didn't have. So they wanted to get FDR out of the way because behind him was a new vice president that they thought wasn't very bright. They didn't think that Truman was very bright at all.
I don't know. I think he was just very quiet.
Exactly. And if they underestimated Harry Truman, I think they missed their guess.
Yeah, I think they really messed up there.
So they wanted FDR out of the way because FDR was supporting the war effort for Churchill. Getting Churchill out of the way didn't really accomplish much. But it was America's military might and their resources and their manufacturing, their mass industrial manufacturing, that was the biggest threat. So taking Churchill out really wouldn't, that's kind of like killing the tail. You're not killing the head there.
Yeah, and you don't want the queen after you. Like, I don't know. Leave the guy alone. Really. He's a connoisseur of brandy and politics. He's really not a danger. Like, he wanted to be more active, like the president and other people, but he just wasn't. I don't know. He didn't have that affect like FDR did and other people. I think he was very jealous of Stalin and the way that FDR looked up to him and kind of felt like the kid left out. But not saying he wasn't a big person, but I think, he kind of had his feelers hurt and he just was not that type. He did not fit into that sort of realm.
A lot of people suspected that Stalin killed FDR. A
Yeah.
lot, a lot of people suspected that. I ran across that numerous times. So the book will spell it out. I'm not going to tell you who actually did the deed. I want you to read it and learn the history. It's very interesting, though, as the war ended, Churchill gets bounced out of power, and that was due in large part by a force inside Britain that was being controlled by some other people. So FDR and Churchill got along okay. FDR and Stalin got along okay. I think that FDR and Churchill got along better, but at the end of the war, Britain basically got nothing.
Yeah, as time passed, they kind of grew apart, and that's where I was talking about how he had that like kid left out on the playground sort of thing going on. At first, they were really close, but towards the end, he was just like, "What the heck? Like, why am I not close with him like I was before?" I don't know. A lot of things really changed over time between the two of them.
It was the war to end all wars. As a matter of fact, Stalin came out and accused the Churchill gang of taking out FDR. It's a very interesting situation where he dies at Warm Springs, Georgia, and I lay it out pretty well in this book. It was 69 hours, death to grave. They could not. There was no autopsy. They could not get this guy in the ground fast enough.
No, and
And
Eleanor would have been the one to order an autopsy, right? And she didn't need an autopsy.
you know what's interesting about Eleanor? She's a fascinating lady. Um, there was no autopsy. It is rumored that the corpse turned colors. I don't know that. I couldn't verify that. I didn't put that in there. It's possible. I don't know.
That's
I mean,
crazy. I'm trying to figure out where I read that because I'm like,
all,
man, I
all dead
thought I read
bodies,
it in your book, but obviously not.
all dead bodies eventually change color. But um, if he turned black or not, I don't know. That's one that's beyond me. But Doctor Doctor Paulin was called to the site where he died, and he's a physician out of Atlanta who's summoned there, and he concurred with the other doctors at his bedside that he had suffered indeed a cerebral hemorrhage. It was the cause of death was correct, folks, but it was not brought on by a natural circumstance. It was everything you have result and cause. Okay, you have the result, which is the cerebral hemorrhage. The cause of it could be anything, and this is what they're not telling you. Why? Because they're not hiding anything from you. They didn't know. History actually revealed what happened years and years later. Um, so, it's interesting thing. No autopsy, nothing. They get this guy in the ground, and you would think. I mean, look at how they paraded Lincoln's body around the country.
Right?
You
That
know,
was insane.
they put him on trains and wagons and everything, and everybody got to look at this guy. Um,
That to me is so disrespectful and detrimental, but that was entertainment. That was the way things were back in those days. You really didn't have TV shows and other things to watch. Let's go gaze at the president's dead body.
It's crazy stuff. So, here we are, FDR, who he'd done so many fireside chats and he had guided America through so many things that people responded like it was a death in the family. I mean, the country really, really was grieving. And 69 hours, which is an incredibly fast speed from death to grave, they couldn't get him in the ground fast enough.
I
And
know.
I think that they knew something was going on. I think that they had suspected it. I don't think that they had any idea what was going on at the time, and they certainly aren't going to tell you now. I had raised on one show, and people flipped out. I said, "Why don't we just exhume Elvis and FDR and get it over with?"
Right? Why not?
And people went crazy. It was I've never had such a
It would
response.
answer so many unanswered questions. It would quell so many conspiracies, conspiracy theories, whatever the heck you want to call it. These different theories that are going around, and especially the fact that, Elvis is out and about and on an island with all these other stars that have faked their own deaths. I mean, this would quell so many questions, including what exactly killed this person.
Well, Elvis's casket was very interesting. It was the same casket as his mother's, and with one exception, it had hidden compartments in it. And those compartments were, there were things put in those compartments with the expectation that at some point the body would be exhumed and they would need to see those things.
Oh, a time capsule.
Very interesting. So it looked like Gladys's casket, but it really wasn't exactly the same.
Was Vernon the one that did all that, or who did that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yep. Vernon knew immediately with everything that was going on behind the scenes with Elvis and the FBI, and he got squashed between the mob and the FBI, and Vernon knew immediately who killed him.
Yeah, they.
Yep, absolutely.
Not one person, but they.
Just like, yeah, they, exactly. And that's a very telling statement that came right out of his mouth when he found his son.
They killed the boy.
Now, what's interesting about parallel between FDR's murder and Elvis's murder, the aggrieved party, both of them did a similar thing. Vernon Presley, Elvis Presley's father, hired 2 private investigators to find the murderer and to investigate what really happened. 12 years after FDR dies, 1945. He dies in 45. 1957, Eleanor Roosevelt is so fed up with hearing that he was murdered. She hires a private investigator.
Yeah, but by that time it was kind of too late, wasn't it?
Well, what happened was the private investigator starts getting the runaround within the annals of the American government. Like a year and a half worth of runaround. And finally, someone had to tell him and break the news. The FDR's medical records are gone. They were held at Bethesda. They were in a locked cabinet in Bethesda, and they're gone. Someone stole them. We have nothing to give you. Bethesda is an interesting thing where all kinds of things turn up missing, including JFK's brain, which has never been recovered.
It's a magical black hole.
Yeah, magical things happen at Bethesda that don't happen anywhere else. So, Eleanor she was furious.
On that note, let's pause there. Eleanor was furious. We do have to go to our second music break. I just looked at the clock and I'm like, holy shnikes. We're almost at the top of the hour. So, yeah, please pause there and we'll continue this next coming hour right after the break. This break is going to be 16 minutes long. We have Cockroach from the UK with We Play House. We have Fireline Kiss with Your Eyes, and then we have Miss Mia Savage with Not a Phase. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this musical break. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. This evening, we are joined by author Stephen B Ubaney, one of my favorite artists. It's so easy to get into his books. Even this FDR book, like there's so many amazing different gems of information that are going on there because of all the hours that you put into this. Like this is really not just a project, but a passion, and it's pretty amazing the things that you have dug up.
Well, it has to be a passion because you're not going to make any money off of it. I'll tell you that. There's so much
Right?
time. I got news for everybody. I mean, there's so much time in these books, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. They'll never be profitable. They never will be. I do it. That's not why I do it. If I sell a book, great. If I don't, great. I'd rather sell a book than not sell a book. But you know what? For me, it's more about doing the right thing and making sure the right information gets out. Because after 75, 80 years of nonsense, somebody out there has to tell the truth. I mean, the guy was murdered, and it boggles my mind. And even like I said before the break, and I'll come back to it. Even FDR's wife, Eleanor, and cousin Eleanor, knew that he was murdered. She was hearing rumors upon rumors upon rumors until the point where some doctors were now talking about it. Because now what FDR died from, what he was poisoned with, was now illegal in the country. Now the information had caught up to what had happened. 12 years is a long time. Now all of a sudden they're saying, maybe there was truth to this rumor that he was poisoned from his enemies inside the White House. And, so she was really on the bandwagon, and they got nothing. Medical records were stolen. They were stolen from locked files at Bethesda, and 4 people had those keys. So that's where the plot really thickens. I can tell everybody the suspects in the book and who they got screened out. Believe it or not, Eleanor Roosevelt was a suspect.
Yeah, generally, it's the husband or the wife. Makes total complete sense.
It has nothing to do with what I feel of these people, but she was a suspect. Why? Again, she was being cheated on, and it was blatant, and it was from within the White House. She was a very active lady. She was all over the White House. She knew everything that was going on, and she was not only screwing around with Lucy Mercer, which was her social secretary. There were other people he was playing around with in the White House, and she was not very necessarily happy about it. So she was the first suspect. Um, Missy LeHand it was revealed that they had an affair. She was also a suspect in my book. For the same reason that Eleanor was a suspect. Lucy Mercer, same thing. They had an affair that lasted 30 years. And of course, no one knew this. Letters surface. It's kind of hard to ignore it. She Lucy Mercer was the one who actually requested Elizabeth paint his portrait, and she was at Warm Springs, Georgia, when FDR died. They were quite hot and heavy. Harry Hopkins. Harry Hopkins is another suspect in my book that had to be screened out. He was one of the people who was really fundamental to. He was a right-hand man of the president. It was hard for FDR to travel because of his physical impairment. So a lot of times Harry Hopkins would go back and forth to Europe and do things for him. And there were times when actually Harry Hopkins started to side more with other world leaders than with FDR. And that also was revealed later on as the decades go by. He was a key policymaker in the Lend-Lease program. He attended conferences between Churchill, of course, and Stalin and FDR. He was the one that pulled FDR out of the meeting when he became violently ill at Yalta. And I think they tried to kill him at Yalta. And I say they because I think there was other people involved. I'll get into more of that in the book. Elizabeth Shumatoff, the painter, definitely a suspect, just like Nicholas Robbins or Nicholas Cobbins or Nicholas Kubakinski, whatever one of the three names you want to call this guy. He was also a suspect. These two people were in the company of the higher end people of the day, who would have paid them handsomely to kill FDR so they could start making money again. All of these are motives. Um, Henrietta Nesbitt, the White House chef. She was a very close friend to Eleanor Roosevelt. She was furious with FDR because of his infidelities inside the White House. Again, this is a very tight-knit group of people. Everybody knew what was going on. Howell Krim, he's an usher at the White House. He knew the FDR family on a personal level. He was accused of being a Soviet spy. Winston Churchill. There were a lot of people who had credible stories that Winston Churchill's group had FDR killed. Arthur Prettyman, who was also at Warm Springs, Georgia, and he was U.S. Chief Petty Officer, and he was also FDR's valet, personal valet. Used to help bathe the man, used to help get him dressed, because FDR just was unable to do these things. So all of these people are screened out as suspects in my book. They start out and they get screened for motive, means, and opportunity. And in the end, you will know the one person who did it and how they did it. And I think how they did it and what they used, the poisoning that they used, is so fantastic, because today we would be able to say, oh, yeah, that's what it is. Not so back then. Not so. So FDR is definitely a president that was assassinated that no one knows was assassinated, because of the technology of the day wasn't up to snuff. You know, there's a lot of cowboys that were killed that are buried in graves that, you know, CSI didn't exist back then. You know, they just went to a different country or a different county or a different state and changed their name. You know,
looks like a booger got him. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. There's a lot of things buried to the sands of time that we just can't go back, and this was one of them. He was rubbed out in the middle of the biggest war we'd ever had, and I hope we ever do have. Other presidents, Warren Harding. No one talks about this. I almost wrote a book on Warren Harding. Warren Harding, he was murdered. He was poisoned.
Yeah, and I like how in some of your books, especially towards the end, you will make notes like this of different people of interest to you that you've thought about writing about and different things going on in their lives. So I really like that aspect of your writing as well.
Yep. President Harding was president for a very short time, and he was caught up in the Teapot Dome scandal, and he died very suspiciously. Teddy Roosevelt, they tried to kill Teddy Roosevelt. And again, nobody talks about these things. You know, these are not taught. We rely on our professors and our teachers to teach us everything that we need to know. Wrong. The books are actually, some of them are wrong now. I've seen some history books that have been written quite recently, and they're warping.
It is freaking amazing. It blows my mind, the things that they've sold to us throughout our time in school, and the things they continue to try to sell to our kids. Like, it's just mind-blowing.
Well, to the victor go the spoils.
Right? They write history. The winner writes the history.
Well, you know, I said it before, Napoleon has the ultimate quote that history is the lie agreed upon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. One of my friends has little ones in school, and they're teaching them now in 3rd and 4th grade that the English came to America to take advantage of the Indians.
Oh, yeah. They knew they were here. That was their sole purpose. You know, why not? Give me a break.
They must have saw it on CNN. I had no idea how the people were here. You know?
Right?
They were building ships under the cover of night to set sail, because people were so mistreated in England. And matter of fact, my ancestors came over on the Mayflower. You know, I mean, I know what I'm talking about. And you know, it's not like how the hell did they know that the Indians were here? They didn't. They had no clue. They landed and they said, "Oh my God, look at these people." And the Indians said, "Look at these people. Look at how funny they're dressed." That's how they knew. They didn't know
They
ahead
look
of
really sick.
It's really something. It's weird because the first few years, the Indians and the Pilgrims, they actually got along pretty well. They didn't have problems until later on. Teddy Roosevelt was another, just like FDR, was another president that was almost assassinated, even though FDR was assassinated. Um, Teddy Roosevelt was doing a speech, and he had his speech rolled up and put in his shirt pocket, breast pocket, and somebody shot him. And the speech was so thick, it stopped the bullet. You can't make this up. That's what I mean. History's awesome. And he said in the speech, "You're not going to kill this bull moose." And that's when the bull moose party was started. He ran in the bull moose party. That's how that was started.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, he was quite an interesting fellow. So there's a lot in history. There's a lot in this book, and I'm not gonna let you guys know who murdered him. I'm not gonna come out and say this, but
You're
it's just
gonna, yeah, you're gonna have to buy the book and read it, because, like I said, there's little gems of history, little things you'd never even know had you not read it in this book. Man, so many
yeah,
hours
and
you've
it's
spent on this stuff. Like, to me, it's just mind blowing.
it's it's fascinating that everybody has a favorite book. Some people love the Elvis books. Some people love the FDR book. I have some people who say, the FDR book is my favorite book. You know, you hated the FDR book.
I did not hate it. Okay, so, and I was thinking about this when I went on my potty break. I was like, man, he thinks I hate this book, and I don't, because look, I've retained information. If I hated it, I would not have retained anything. Yes, it took me a little more to get into than Elvis and Diana, but how could it not? Elvis and Diana, like you said, on our perspective of time and stasis and whatnot, more in my realm of things I know about, things that I was raised hearing and seeing and watching, and the whole fairy tale wedding and all this other stuff. Like, my mom was totally sucked into the TV for that. Um, I did not hate the FDR book. I have to tell you, I did not hate it. Hate is a bad word. No, it was harder for me to get into it than it was the Elvis and Diana thing. And I think it was the excitement of Elvis's life and Diana's life, and yes, FDR's life. I really looked up to him as a president, like what he went through with polio, how hard he worked, and the different things he did to make himself appear stronger. And I think he really was a strong individual. It was just kind of difficult for me to get into it.
Well, it's not
But I did
it's not our
enjoy it.
time.
I did.
Well, good. I'm glad. It's not our time period. It was it was a time before
Exactly.
our time, and I think that there's so much history that has been lost now that people have a problem. And so, but I had some people say, "Man, this is the best book I ever read on this subject. I love this book." And other people say, "I love the Elvis book." And now people are saying, "I love the Diana book." Hey, as long as they love something I write, my books are weird. Um, I keep them short and I keep them common English because people are busy. I keep them around 200 pages, and I keep the print big. I don't. An Indian chief once said it takes few words to say the truth. Get to the point. Nobody wants to read a 2,000-page book that meanders around forever. And I wouldn't write that kind of book anyway. But you have to get to the point. You have to tell people what they need to know and move on. For me, it's about waking people up, because if you don't know your history, you're going to repeat it. Okay, so my books are different. They're also very cross genre.
Yeah, and that's my favorite saying too. If you do not learn history, because I've had my kids be like, "Mom, why do I need to learn this stuff? Like, this happened so long ago." If you don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. And this has been proven time and time again from things that they've hidden from us, and then how things are repeated.
Absolutely, absolutely. You will repeat it if you don't remember it. And this generation of World War II is now gone. There are very few of them left. And guess what we're talking about again? Socialism and communism. We haven't learned the lesson yet.
I know
We
there's
haven't.
people out there today saying Biden is a communist, like they're trying to get us into communism the way they're giving us, yeah, these stimuluses, etc., etc. Like, it does kind of look like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we just have not learned those lessons because we don't care to read that because it's history. It comes up every, I don't know, every 80 years, every 90 years, just long enough for the generation who suffered through it to disappear. And guess what? Khrushchev was right. America's going to rot from within.
Mm-hmm.
He said then your great grandchildren are going to live under communism and they're never going to know it.
Yeah, they won't have a clue.
Very interesting stuff. So this is a very interesting book series. I hope you find something that you like. Well, like I said, I sell the bananas out of these books, so I'm not trying to get a book sale, but there information in there that everybody go to whomurderedbooks.com. And I'll tell you what, we're 22 years into the 21st century, and you can still get a present for somebody for around $20. It's impossible to believe that
That's
we're
pretty
this.
epic.
You can't get anything for $20, but I'll tell you what, if you know somebody who's into history or celebrity deaths or mystery or conspiracy or true crime or cold case, this kind of bridges all of those genres. And there's something in there that somebody will like. So um, get this word out. Give this book to somebody. All right. Um, the next book will be on. I'm taking an elongated break because, yes, I'm suffering from burnout. I
I
did
know,
80.
and you've done such a good job, and you love it, but at the same time, sometimes enough is enough. Is
Well,
enough.
I did 87 shows last year.
I can't
And
believe like how much you do. Like
yeah,
I would be totally burnt out too.
and I'm getting to the point where, I might go fishing here for a while. My next book is going to be on Nikola Tesla. And I know you're excited about that book. And
I'm so excited.
I'm kind of curious as to why you're excited about that one. It's half written, by the way.
I love Tesla. Like he's always intrigued me. Just the way he came out with energy, the whole lights that he had at the certain fair thing they had going on, and then the way Edison came through and was like, "Oh, but look at this," Tesla was looking out for us. He knew like free energy for all, and I could see different things that could go wrong, like cancer and other crazy things. But still, like we get it from electricity and other things, anyways. But free, they can't have that. Like they got to charge for it. You got to make money off of what the people are using, and that's not the way Tesla was. Like Tesla, he received so much information. I do believe he was in contact with those damn Allens. I do believe that he was receiving revelation and different things, and he was a prophet of sorts as far as different designs and technology and things that he was taking in and willing to just give to us. Everybody else had to take it, and just his life, the way he thought of us women as succubuses because we just steal his intelligent energy. And then how he kind of withdrew in his latter years because of the ways that he was attacked and ways that he was just put out rough and tumble because of Edison and other people that were making the money, and he's not. He's looking for the welfare of all. And that's what I really loved about him. He was out there to help us. And he was so smart, so intelligent, so beautiful. Then he died in a very lonely, relative way. And then his crates and crates and crates of information disappear, and there's like 8 left. Seriously? There was about 50 something or whatever crates here before. Now there's 8. Why didn't they take them all? Maybe because they're like, if we leave a few, they won't even notice. I don't know. It's just so epic and mind blowing, and I want to hear what you have to say because I know how much you dig into things and how relative the information is and how true and factual. You're not just like, oh, well, so and so said this. You're actually going to the archives and you're digging and you're doing all this stuff and writing these epic books. I love them all.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear that. I'm interested in writing the Tesla book, and I know I live around the Niagara Falls area, and I'm on the obviously I don't live in Canada. I live in the New York side, and I've been in contact with some people in Canada because I wanted to tour the remains of what's up there. There's a statue on the Canadian side of the falls of Nikola Tesla.
That's
and it
awesome.
says what he did and everything, and it has the site. I wanted to get a private tour. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
get some pictures in there that nobody had, and I wanted to get up there with another researcher who's been on the History Channel a bunch, named Mark Seifer, who's I've been in contact with a couple times. Really, really nice man. And you know what? Depending on who you talk to, is how far you'll get. I talked to two different people. Two people said, "Yeah, there's stuff up here that we can let you tour and take pictures of. Let me turn you on to my supervisor." The supervisor said, "No, there's." That's a little bizarre.
The
Uh,
supervisor said, no, you broke up because the powers that be don't want people to hear that. So they said, what?
the two people I spoke with said, "Yeah, there's the remains of what he was using here for a station or a facility."
Do you know
And they
what?
said, "I'll put you in touch with our supervisor." And when I got contacted by the supervisor said there was nothing up there.
Hmm.
It's like, well, is it there or isn't it? I mean, it's not a multiple choice question. It's like, is it or isn't it? Up and down means yes, side to side means no. Tell me what it is. Out in his laboratory was out in the remains of it is an empty field out in Colorado Springs. There's a little plaque out there. This is where Nikola Tesla's thing would be,
I
and it's gone.
have a little gem
There's
of
nothing.
information that will blow your mind. Guess what? So we
Absolutely.
we did
Go
a
ahead.
security gig up in Rico, and right outside of Rico, Colorado, is a little community that is run off of Tesla power. This place is still up and running. And at the beginning of this little neighborhood that I actually trespassed in because I'm like, I have to see this for myself. But at the very beginning, there's a building, and you look in there, and there's these little concrete walls, and it's just an empty space, and there's little concrete walls, and I'm like, what's inside of those little concrete, whatever's going on? I don't see the Tesla coil. I don't see anything else. Like, what is in there that is powering this neighborhood that Tesla created? And so then I go up in my Toyota SR5 four-wheel drive. I believe it was an 84. And I'm going through the neighborhood, and everybody's like looking out their windows at me. And I'm like, oh my God, getting really nervous because people don't recognize me. They know I'm an outsider and I'm inside their neighborhood. And people actually started following me until I left the neighborhood. But they were all electrically powered. There was no cables, no nothing. Like, this was Tesla energy. And so there is still a little community that's being powered by it. So if you ever come to Colorado, let me know and I will take you up there and I will show you this neighborhood. Maybe because
He
of this.
did. To running wires. Our society is being held back. We should have robots doing our laundry now. We're 22
I
years
know,
into the
where's my fucking
21st
Rosie
century.
robot?
I mean, and we're being held back because people who hold the monopolies are using antiquated technology. It's really quite sad when you stop and think about it. But FDR and Tesla Connect, and this is something that no one knows about. FDR and Tesla Connect. Tesla was trying to sell his death ray technology to the United States government because this thing could wipe out fleets of planes and cities. This thing was really it was really something else. So he got snubbed, absolutely snubbed. They wanted nothing to do with him. They were going with the Manhattan Project, and they were going towards the nuclear bomb and this and that and the other thing. Why? Because it was easier for them to do because through Operation Paperclip at the end of
Mm,
the war, they had they gave basically a free ticket to the German scientists, Werner von Braun being one of them. Bring your stuff over here, help us win the war, and we won't prosecute you for war crimes. So they already had the heavy water experiments. We were just finishing them. We had our own, but I don't think we're as far as advanced as they were. So here's Tesla saying, hey, look, this death ray will wipe out all kinds of things. They were further along with the nuclear technology in a couple of top secret projects. So Tesla got to the point where here's a guy who needs this next big the next big products and internal combustion engine. His research assistants steal his research material.
That
So if
would
they could,
be for the best. Like maybe they hid it out somewhere or whatever. Because where is this technology? Unless it's like cell phones and different things we're using today. I mean, where is this technology? Where did all these crates go? Where is this
well,
information?
and that is the $64,000 question. Number one, we don't know what was in it, and that we might be using the technology today. We don't know.
Man, I could
And
really
number
use
two,
that
we don't know.
$64,000 right now.
And we don't know. We don't know. What it was, and we don't know who's got it, and if we're using it or not. So you have to ask yourself. Like I said, was it the U.S. government who killed him so he couldn't do business with Stalin and other countries?
Was it Edison?
There's a lot of people. Was it someone who was gone? Did one of his helpers or
Because holy shnikes, that just came out. Working on number 3.
so, like I said, pardon me, when God goes to bed tonight, he's going to hear people on one side of the world begging to stop the rain and the other side of the world begging for, because I want to catch the guy, So
Or guys.
same thing, right? The thing with so I've been doing this through mutual friends. I don't know these people. Okay, 9 years before Jerry T. Francisco botched the Elvis Presley autopsy, he botched Martin Luther King's autopsy, um, and it intersects with the Elvis book. And they basically they use some tactics that they shouldn't have to make James Earl Ray confess to doing something that he didn't confess to. He also wasn't.
Something like give me a
And he finally caught up with her, and he finally got the
break, and to make your soul happy. That'd be awesome. Reignite that light, reignite that passion, and then come back and write that book. Like for me, that would be the one to tie off the series. I don't know. It just feels so perfect.
We'll see what happens with that. Kennedy, I'm so furious with those people. All they do is
I
fight and
know.
argue. And
It's
they're
so
such
bad.
nice people. I mean, they're great people in that community, and they all get along personally, but they fight. And
Yeah,
they
this
fight and
is
fight.
Camelot. There's no fighting allowed in Camelot.
They fight more than they solve anything. And I said this at one conference. I had to say a couple words, and I don't speak at these conferences because I'm just not that important enough in their world, actually. There are people who know way more about that than I do, but I had to introduce somebody, and I put my 2 cents in for what it was worth. I said, if JFK walked through that door right now, and he asked you all what you did to solve his murder, what would you tell him? And the place got really quiet because everyone is holding their own little piece of information. It's a little cottage industry. They're publishing their own books, and no one's putting everything together to get this done. And it's infuriating to me that all they've done is profit from it, and no
Mm-hmm.
one's doing the right thing. So I just couldn't put my nose in that trough, and it is a trough. That doesn't exist with Elvis. That doesn't exist with FDR. Nobody knew FDR was murdered. I think there might have been a conspiracy theory out there, and I hate those two words.
I know. It's terrible.
But I mean, with Martin Luther King, the same thing. All these people are intertwined with all of these things, and I really want to move on to write other things. I'll tell you what, if you want a King thing, I'll write it with you.
If what? You kind of broke up a little bit.
Am I having microphone problems?
You sound good now.
Okay, so if I'll tell you what, if you want me to do the Martin Luther King book, write it with me.
Okay. I'll do it. Yes.
I'll let you write half of the book, and I'll write the second half of the book.
Oh, wow.
Because I am at my end of spending 10,000 hours on a book.
We can split it.
You sound like you're into it, so.
Yeah, I am so intrigued and enthralled and interested. And man, what an epic proposition. Seriously, how could I say no?
The FDR book, it's funny how the FDR book and the Tesla book collide, and no one knows about this. No one knows that Tesla was trying to get the United States government to use his weaponry with electricity to just basically vaporize the enemy. No one knows this information.
Remember in the 80s when people were spontaneously combusting?
Yeah, can you order that on people?
If I
Yeah,
figured it out, I'll let you know.
I know a couple people who could spontaneously combust, and I wouldn't
Yeah,
shed
me
many tears.
too.
Actually. A couple of them come to mind that I won't mention, but all of these things overlap. Um, it's amazing when you look at the circumstances surrounding all of the cover-ups, the sanitized death scene. Um, it looked just like FDR here.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no autopsy. Magically, no one cared what killed the guy.
No, Eleanor's like, no, we gotta get him in the ground as soon as possible. Let's do this.
Makes no sense.
And
Makes
then, I don't
absolutely
know, I
no
think
sense.
she was kind of trying to cover her tracks a little bit, being like, oh, let's do this investigation because everybody keeps saying things. And it went nowhere. Not only did it go nowhere, things disappeared. I don't know. May not have been her. Could have been somebody else. She could have been colluding. I'm not sure. But
Plant. Yep, absolutely. Um, Either if you really want to confuse investigators, either remove evidence or plant new evidence.
yeah, I think the planting of it is something that'll really throw an investigator off.
Because their minds will spin out of control. And Elvis Presley, they planted syringes with no needle, and it drove them crazy. They could not figure out there was no needle marks on Elvis, not one.
There shouldn't have been because he was not a needle user. This is just a theory that people are saying just to make you think he was some sort of junkie addict. Like,
Well,
no,
the more fantastic a story is, the easier it sells. People are
right?
more apt to believe that Elvis Presley's alive, walking out there around. He's our new Bigfoot. They have little pictures of him walking,
Well,
and
did you see how hairy he got right before he died? I can see him kind of being like Bigfoot. I'm just kidding.
it's just, I mean, it's just so crazy. I mean, these people need to stop. They need to, first of all, they need to grow up, and they need to stop deluding themselves.
Well, also there's the people out there that are acting like they're Elvis. Like, I saw this guy that was living in Tennessee. I think he was like somewhat homeless. And this guy would go around and he'd be singing and he had his hair all fluffed out and he did look like Elvis if Elvis was alive today. But these could be one of the people back in the day that were his doppelganger or whatever that were hired to take over in these films and pictures and productions and other things where he just didn't have the time or energy or the spirit to do it anymore. Like, bring in the clones. So this guy could have been one of the past clones or something, being like, "Hey, could you imagine how much money I could rake in right now saying I'm Elvis?"
Now, Elvis Presley, he also used those people through his movies, and then
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, he
Yeah,
used
I
some
would
of his
too.
body doubles. He used his body doubles because he just the guy had no break from the world.
They were
So
literally burning him out.
he would plop a body double and make him come out and wave to the fans and plop him in a body double in a limousine and take off. And then 20 minutes later, Elvis would take off somewhere else. Princess Diana did the same thing. All those pictures they saw in my book, Who Murdered Diana, nobody knew this until I brought it out. That there she had a body double. Some of the pictures that were snapped of her on the boat with Dodi Al-Fayed were not Princess Diana,
And
and
you
it's
can
verified.
tell, not only because of the differences, the little small differences, if you look really, really close, you could see, but also the passion between the two. Like the way that Dodie and this replicator were sitting there and uh, communicating with each other and talking and communicating was not the passionate relationship that they actually had.
No, no, absolutely. And I mean, they're all using body doubles. Lincoln had a body double. That Lincoln had food testers. All of this is swirling around, and these people use the same tactics. I mean, it's uh, it's really amazing when you stop and put all of the pieces of the puzzle together. Um, Hitler was using body double. Saddam Hussein was using a body double. Howard Hughes used a body double. These people, when you're the ultra elite and the ultra famous, you need to be very careful where you are, and you need to throw people off the track, especially if you're getting death threats.
Definitely.
I do not know if FDR had a body double. That one I looked for, and I couldn't. I actually looked for the evidence in the National Archives. But again, we have to talk about the National Archives. That is not the keeper of all knowledge, great and small.
No, there's another place where they really, really, really keep all the secret stuff.
The National Archives is just the governmental library that's what they want you to see.
Yeah, you can partake in this.
There's a man out there who, well, he's gone now, as most of the JFK researchers who were really good have gone. His name was Don Adams, and he was an FBI agent, and he retired, and he was special agent in Dallas at the time of the Kennedy assassination, and he was tasked with finding the bullets and where they went and everything. And I think he found, I'm not sure, I think he found 11 where the bullets landed either in the car or, like one hit a curb. I think he found 11 shots, and he snapped pictures of them, and he turned them into his superiors. And
he's like, talking about what a D-bag that enemy. Yeah, there is
money and peace. That's what got Diana killed here. And the one that's coming up that you would not possibly believe. Decades and decades after these people died,
that Tesla has powered. It's going to be blown. My mind was, I was just like, how is this happening?
I'll have to check it out. And I just want to tell everybody that
pretty freaking amazing.